What former stud running back might be best on your bench in week 6? Who's going to be catching balls from Baker Mayfield on Sunday? And is Joe Flacco just what Chase Brown needed? Plus, the father and son duo of Greg and Matthew Salter are going to join us to talk about how they nearly got to their team to the mountaintop last week in the FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament, hitting 4th place overall. We've got a great show for you tonight. Greg and Matthew Salter are here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man. Nobody ever told me what a man was.
Welcome in. Hello to all of you Balkaholics and Ferrelliacs. Thank you, Rob. Greetings and salutations, everybody. This is the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My normal co-host, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Ferrell Elliott, has the night off because he is too busy victory lapping his great Rico Dowdle advice last week on the show. So he will rejoin us next week, I believe, live on location. Very excited for that as well. No, but Ferrell is a little bit under the weather, so he's not going to join me tonight. But that's okay, because I definitely got the ammunition to put together a great show thanks to 2 great FFPC players. I want to remind everybody, if you want to connect with us, you can do so on X at hsffhour. I'm at Eric Balkman, and always check out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. Facebook.com/hsffhour is where to reach us there. You can also email the show at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. If you have any questions for us, now is the time to send them in. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, all the X posts, and the emails coming up in our fantasy feedback segment later on in the show. I want to thank our audio engineer and my best friend Bryce, and of course our producer and mutual friend Rob. The FFPC Weekly Challenge is live for Sunday. No draft, no salary cap. Just pick 10 players or 12 players if you want to play with kickers and defenses. You can win up to $2,500 weekly, and we do have games in the 10-team, 30-team, and 100-team realm. So you can play in any one of those formats. Remember, only one player per NFL team. So if you want, I'm trying to think of a good example here. If you want Matthew Golden, you can't have Josh Jacobs. If you want Jaden Daniels, you cannot have Zach Ertz, that kind of thing. myffpc.com is where to go, myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live, which will be next Tuesday. And I'll have more information on next week's shows on the FFPC family of podcasts. All right. As my high school history teacher used to say, enough of the bear baiting. Let's get into tonight's show. We're going to bring in our guests, ladies and gentlemen, right now, our guest co-host for the evening. This is a father and son duo that nearly got one of their Big Gorilla teams all the way to first place last week in the FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament. They're here tonight to not only share how they did it, but how they're trying to scheme and plot and win their way to a $1 million grand prize this year. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce to you both Greg and Matt Salter joining me on the show tonight. Gentlemen, good evening. Thanks so much for hopping aboard.
Thank you. Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to talk to you guys. Now, do I have a couple of Eagles fans in my midst right now?
You have one.
Right.
It's been a tough night here in New Jersey. It's been a tough day between the Phillies and the Eagles. But I am a diehard Eagles fan and a season ticket holder.
What happened to the Eagles last night against the Giants? I just was blown away.
It's called an inept offense is what it's called. I think bad, play calling, all of that. There's too much talent on the field right now to just, play that way. So.
I'm sure we'll get into a little bit of Eagles conversation, more Eagles conversation tonight. But what I want to do right away is kind of get to know you guys and have our viewers get to know you as well. When you're not winning FFPC leagues, when you're not hanging around at the top of the leaderboard in the Big Gorilla, what are you guys doing for a living? Greg, I'll let you take the lead on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a chief, financial officer of a medical education and conference business here in New Jersey.
A CFO, all right. And what about you, Matt?
I'm currently a senior at Syracuse University studying digital broadcast and journalism. So aspire to work in the sports media industry one day.
Yeah, that's a good place to go to if you want to work in sports media for sure. One of the guys at my local radio station here in Northeast Wisconsin, actually, I think it was last year or the year before, graduated. He's obviously working in sports journalism. He graduated from Syracuse as well. So pretty cool stuff there. And my God, is there a long line of people that have gone on to do great things in sports journalism? We had on the FFPC Insider Access show last night, my guest co-host was Brian Drake. From Fantasy Point, SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, a guy who also went to Syracuse as well. So very cool of the Syracuse flavor that we're getting on the FFPC shows this week. Matt, I went back and I looked at this draft that you guys had done in the Big Gorilla, and I noticed that in the first 6 rounds, you only drafted one running back. And I want to know, is that kind of typically like how you guys like to draft? We were loading up on receivers, maybe a couple of tight ends, maybe a quarterback in there, and then figure out running backs later as you did pound them in the mid rounds. How typical of a draft start was this for you guys?
For me personally, it kind of tends to be common in a lot of my drafts. I always do find myself with this approach, especially coming into this year. But I kind of always just let the draft come to me. And that's kind of how this specific draft turned out to be. We started off with Christian McCaffrey. I was high on him coming into the year. I was ready to, the past years he's been burned by, some people have been burned by him. I have yet to have been burned by him. So we were good. I had to convince my dad into, pulling the trigger on him round 1. And then after that, it's kind of some value at wide receivers that kept falling, as well as quarterback. And it's sometimes it's gutsy to, wait on those running backs. But I told my dad, we'll be good. We'll take them. We'll hammer them in the mid rounds, and we'll figure it out. And it's worked to now. So hopefully it can continue.
Greg, I assume you've been burned by McCaffrey before?
Kind of burned and kind of not burned, Eric.
Yeah.
So last year, I was in a pretty high stakes league, extremely competitive league, and we had number 1 pick, and we drafted Christian McCaffrey, who I probably got 2 games of productivity out of him. But somehow we cobbled it all together and won the league. So I'd been burned by him, but after that, I knew I was like, I'm never going to draft him again. So it did take a little bit of convincing on Matt's part to pick him this year.
And I've been that way before, not necessarily with McCaffrey, but I've had players where I draft him and, immediate buyer's remorse as soon as the season starts. You have instant regret on it. And I found that it's number 1, it's no way to live. And number 2, I don't think it's a good way to play fantasy football because you're eliminating these players off your board and you're shortening your board up where you have fewer options because you're like, I don't want to deal with this again. And it's a year-to-year thing. So you always want to make sure that you kind of clear you remember everything. And obviously, as my mom always says, you don't want to be so open-minded that everything out of your brain falls out, but you still want to remember okay, this guy is capable of great things. And obviously, as Matt pointed out, Christian McCaffrey off to a great start this year as well. Start sit question. And this is one you guys had already done. Last night, Wan'Dale Robinson played for the Giants. Matt, you guys elected to go with Romeo Doubs in one of your flex spots instead. Now, hindsight's 2020. Obviously, Robinson had a solid game last night. But I just want to know the thought process here. Why did you ultimately decide that Doubs would be and he still could be the better play, by the way. Why did you decide that he would be the better play for you this week over Robinson? And bear in mind to the listeners out there and viewers out there, Doubs did have a 3-touchdown week the last time the Packers took the field.
Yeah, so I'm gonna throw my dad under the bus a little bit here. When it comes to this team, there's a little bit of a hierarchy. He's the investor. I'm here to evaluate the talent and bring the talent in, and he's usually setting the lineup. So this was his start set decision, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Doubs before the bye did have a really, really good game, and we'll see if maybe the bye will help and it could come out and he can do play just as good. But like you said, hindsight's 2020. Wan'Dale Robinson had a great game last night. It was a practice squad group of wide receivers out there. So we'll see how the week pans out. But I'm sorry, Dad. I did have to throw you under the bus there a little bit.
That's okay. Yeah, that's okay. I am still optimistic, Eric. I think when we, take a look at start sits, I'm shooting for the ceiling, especially in high stake leagues. And Dobbs is coming off of a huge week. Could there be a little bit of bias going in there because Wan'Dale Robinson against Quinion Mitchell, maybe a little bit. I figured he'd be locked down, but 6 catches, 80 yards at a touchdown. I still think that Dobbs will outscore this week, though.
Cortland Sutton is really the only guy. This is what I always say. Hindsight 2020 is 2020. Cortland Sutton's really been the only guy that has done anything against Mitchell this year. He has been unbelievable, like almost every single week. And, I'm watching my beloved Brewers last night after I was trying to flip back and forth between the football game and the baseball game. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, in what scenario would I have ever assumed that this game would play out the way it did with the Giants and the Eagles? And I feel like if we go back and look before that game, we're kind of like, obviously Wan'Dale Robinson is sitting. You're not going to play him against the Eagles. Are you kidding me? And then lo and behold, I always say it's a funny game played with a funny shaped ball. Wild stuff happens. We saw some wild stuff last night. Okay. Let's move on here. Jake Ferguson, the pride of the University of Wisconsin, has been the best tight end in fantasy football this year. He has been getting a ton of targets. He's been turning them into a ton of catches, and he's even found the end zone a few times as well. You guys get him, Matt, here, tight end 14 in the 9th round. So when you guys drafted this team together, right? Were you in the same room or talking or whatever?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right. Perfect. So when you're on the clock here in the 9th round, Ferguson's out there. Was this just a guy that you had been looking at that you maybe thought about in the 8th round? Was this a player that just was hey, he's the best player out there. Let's just grab him. We got to figure out tight end. Or was he a specific target for you, Matt?
I mean, coming into this year, kind of when I looked at the position of tight end in my drafts, if you weren't drafting Bowers, McBride, or Kittle, you might as well have waited to take tight end 10 through 12 over tight end 4. So that was kind of what I told my dad was what we're going to do. So once I saw like Evan Ingrams of the world coming off the board, the David Njokes of the world, I was like, why would we spend our 7th round pick on a quality player like that when I can wait 2 rounds and capitalize on other skill positions and get a guy like Jake Ferguson? I think Jake Ferguson might have been one of those last few guys I told my dad in the tier that I was like, we have to walk out with one of these tight ends. And I will say we've definitely benefited from the CD injury. That's Dak. Dak's guy is Ferguson. He'll get him the ball, and they're throwing the ball 40 times a game. But I do believe when CD does come back this week or next week, he will still continue to produce at a top 5 tight end level the rest of the year.
That's what's so great about that Dallas defense, right? It's not terrible, but it's definitely not great. And that is the gift that keeps on giving for fantasy players, to have guys like CeeDee Lamb, like George Pickens, like Jake Ferguson. You don't have to worry about is it going to be a Ferguson week or a Lamb week, or all these guys can excel in all the same weeks. And the way Dak Prescott's playing, God, that Packers game, he was unbelievable. And so this is a good thing. And you have Javonte freaking Williams, who has just found the fountain of youth. That knee looks better than it ever did here. That Dallas offense is one of our favorites in fantasy football right now. Conversely, one of our least favorite offenses in fantasy football, the Tennessee Titans, who squeezed out a win against the Arizona Cardinals last week, which was an amazing ending. One of the other thing that we could talk about this week, and that we talked about a little bit last week, Tyjae Spears has made his return off of IR. So he is now in that backfield with Tony Pollard. Pollard, I think, had his lowest usage of the season last week, which is to be expected when you have Spears coming back, but it was still pretty high. So Matt, I guess I'll throw this to you here. Is this eventually, do you foresee this becoming a 50-50 split, or is Tyjae Spears simply an injury away type guy that you want to keep on your roster in case anything happens to Pollard, but he doesn't have much standalone value? How do you view this running back situation in Tennessee?
I think this will probably creep towards a 50-50 split. I've seen reports the last week or two saying that they want to get Tajay Spears more involved. And I know that they've been trying to do that since, Derrick Henry's left there. So I do think it will come close to that. Now, here's the issue. Does that mean we can start him? Probably not. This offense is really bad. And until they take that step forward and Cam Ward can elevate this offense to another level and kind of get it going, I think he is going to be more of a bench stash. And when he shows that he can turn those touches into points and that offense is moving the ball more and better, I think we'll be able to see him as a really good flex option, maybe RB2. But yeah, I do anticipate this becoming a 50-50 split at some point.
Greg, you have let Matt take the wheel for a lot of this, and I feel like he takes the wheel in managing these teams as well. However, I think what you have might be the toughest thing to do is the start sits, because I botch those on a weekly basis. How do you guys divide up the labor? Like, what kind of input do you have on this, knowing that you kind of let Matt drive the train, but you're still the navigator at certain points as well?
Yeah, I think he and I are on the same page. I mean, we're always texting back and forth, so we kind of know what each other are thinking. Pretty much we're in sync. If I have a lot of doubt in my mind, I'm always talking with him to figure out, where we should go. But haven't had too many hugely, controversial start sits yet. But the season's still young.
Well, and that's the thing too. Like I remember playing in another high stakes contest. This would have been, God, how many years ago now? 17 or 18 years ago. But I remember being in first place in that championship round, and you're sweating. It's like playoff baseball, like where you hang on every pitch, you hang on every lineup decision and weather report and social media account, and trying to make sure that you're not botching this, or even worse, thinking too long. I always say this to Ferrell: think long, think wrong. And you end up having paralysis by analysis, and you talk yourself out of making the correct decision, which you should have, which you were ready to make. And so it's fun, but it can be exhausting as well. The Chris Olave New Orleans Saints passing attack. This was brought to my attention. I guess I didn't realize it, Matt. But one of my co-hosts for my local fantasy football show here in Wisconsin said, "Have you looked at Chris Olave's stats this season?" And I guess I hadn't looked at it closely. I knew he was doing all right. Mm-hmm. This guy, he's been startable every single week. He hasn't had one of those big blow-up games, one of those big needle-moving spike week type performances yet. Do you think we're going to see that with Spencer Rattler, who I think has been better than I thought he was going to be this year? You think we're going to see at some point this season Olave kind of going back to what he was when he had more of a name brand quarterback, where he gets an 8 catch for 160 yard, 2 touchdown performance? It's like I don't want to I don't want to get greedy, because I like what I've seen so far, but I just want more. Are we going to get more from Olave?
Yeah, I mean, Rattler's definitely been better than advertised. I'm coming in, it was like a quarterback battle, and people probably thought we would see in every other week out of these two, just being bad. But he's shown that he's probably going to start until further notice. And I mean, Olave has seen. I mean, I have the targets right here. Week 1, 13 targets, then 10 targets, 14 targets, 6 targets, and then 11 targets last week. So he's seeing the volume. The issue is these yards per target are really bad, and these yards per catch are really bad. So we need these targets to turn into catches and yards. Will that happen? I would imagine as the season goes on that has to increasingly get better, and that chemistry and that offense will get better. So I would say, yes, we probably will see some boom games out of him. But I think until that we see that first one, right now, he's really just a safe floor play at flex if you want. But I think that they probably are coming in the near future, especially when they get some good matchups. They have yet to really face any, premium matchups yet. So we'll see what happens with him.
I missed this in the chat earlier, and I want to bring this up right now, Greg. We had John Terry, a Pennsylvanian. I shouldn't say another, but a Pennsylvanian hanging out, and we were talking about the Ferguson pick before, where you guys take him as tight end 14 at the 907. And he said, didn't Dad want Dallas Goedert? Give him one Eagle. And I wonder if Goddard was even available. So I'm looking at the draft board right now. I can't put it up on the screen because I got it on a different machine right now.
He was available.
He was available. He went 6 picks after Jake Ferguson went. So, Greg, I have to ask, how hard did you fight for Dallas Goedert over Jake Ferguson?
I think I did say Goddard, but Matt was like, no, we got to get Ferguson. I think we wanted to pick up Goddard as a backup, somewhere in the next few rounds after, but it looks like he went actually the next round. Actually, he went like 6 or 7 picks after Ferguson. Yep. So he never even made his way back to us.
I will say, Dallas Goedert has been pretty good this year. I mean, every time I watch an Eagles game, he is open and somewhere in the middle of the field, and that is Jalen Hurts' safety blanket. One of my buddies drafted Dallas Goedert and was really wanting to trade him all offseason, trying to get a better tight end. I'm like, just wait, you're gonna be fine. And he's panned out. He's been awesome. So yeah, I mean, I guess we couldn't have went wrong with one of these tight ends. He had to, bite the bullet on a Cowboy, but
by fantasy points per game in the FFPC, which obviously we do points per game because the Eagles already played this week. Dallas Goedert is 6th right now, behind one Jake Ferguson. So obviously you guys made the correct call, at least so far. Somebody named Darren Waller, for God's sake, unbelievable stuff. Tyler Warren, Trey McBride, Dalton Kincaid, and then it's Dallas Goedert after that, again, by fantasy points per game in the FFPC. Guys, we have another question from YouTube. Our good buddy Finns fan, Tom Smith, wants to know if we should be playing Calvin Ridley versus the Raiders this week. Matt, breakout performance for 2025, at least for Calvin Ridley last week, as Cam Ward found him numerous times for a lot of big plays, well over 100 yards, 4 or 5, half dozen catches. I can't remember exactly what it was. He gets the Raiders secondary this week. And I know sometimes we like to see this 2 weeks in a row, but you can't really mess around with that in the FFPC because of the short regular season. Obviously, it would depend upon who else you have. But in a vacuum, I think I am breaking ties in favor of flexing out Calvin Ridley this week rather than keeping him on my bench. What would you say, Matt?
I couldn't agree more. This was something that came into the year with hype. I loved him. I was like, this was going to be one of those prime examples where a vet wide receiver gets their rookie wide receiver and they unlock each other, and it comes out to great things. We didn't see that yet. And watching the broadcast last week for that Titans game was pretty funny how his 4-game split from last year, the first 4 games, the rest of the season also was pretty bad, and the rest of the season was really good. So I would say I kind of think that this was just kind of the game last week where they broke out. I think that connection, we might see that flourish. Like you said, the Raiders secondary, I would definitely, depending on who you have to start, I think this is a very good option to throw in your flex this week.
I think that fortune favors the bold, and it would be a bold call to start Ridley again this week. And I think that the stars are aligning for another nice week from Ridley. So I'm definitely down for Calvin Ridley in my starting lineup. Let's move on and talk about Quinshon Judkins, a guy that really has defied the expectations for many fantasy players out there. A guy who basically had 0 training camp, 0 preseason work, just steps in as if he is an old pro in the NFL with some of the plays he's busting off, with not a whole lot of threat from the passing game. So obviously teams are being able to load the box against Judkins, and yet he still keeps making plays. Dylan Gabriel is now the starting quarterback for the Browns. They don't have the Joe Flacco safety net anymore. They got rid of him. He's now a Cincinnati Bengal. What about Judkins keeping up this level of production? Do you think he still continues to do what he has been doing, Matt, now with Gabriel in at quarterback?
Yeah, absolutely. This guy, I believe he was the 2nd pick of the 2nd round last April. If not top 3, he was right up there. He was right after the Hampton and Genty, the 3rd back off the board in a class that people thought was going to be really good. So it's no question if he's not talented. And every week he's got increasingly better and better. Like his snaps have gone up, his touches have gone up. And last week we would probably think he had a 50-yard touchdown called back. He scores that, doesn't get called back. We're looking at a 20+ point plus week out of him, and people are probably talking about this guy as like a top 10 running back the rest of the season. So I absolutely think he'll keep it up. Stefanski wants to run the ball. We've seen this before. And I think, like you said, he has missed all of training camp. And so he's essentially like 4 or 5 weeks into learning this offense and getting with this group. So I absolutely think it's going to get better and better as he gets more accustomed to the playbook and the team. I think that this guy will probably see a really good finish. He'll probably be a league winner down the stretch for a lot of teams.
I don't want to get into the specifics on it because it's kind of embarrassing, but I timed out in a dynasty rookie draft in the first round. There was some extenuating circumstances. It was my fault. I totally take the blame, but I was ticked off because I wasn't getting Egbuka anywhere. I was always missing him. Like I had the 8th pick and he goes 7. I had the 9th pick, he go 8. And then in this draft, the way it worked out, I'm like, God, I'm finally going to get him because I had the 6th pick and I knew he was going to make it there. And then stuff happened. I don't want to blame anybody. I'm in charge of it. I timed out. And of course, the guy after me took Egbuka. And I was super ticked off at the time because the guy that had autoed for me, Quinshon Judkins. And now it's looking like, well, I'd still rather have Egbuka. But Judkins looks like he's a real one. And he might be a fantasy difference maker, not only in 2025, but 2026 and beyond. Or maybe I'm just wish casting that because he's on my team. I don't know. Jalen Coker, we have to talk about him. He is questionable this week. I shouldn't say he's questionable. I think he's been practicing. Carolina opened up his window to practice. But as of like an hour before the show, I checked. He's still on IR. They have not activated him. And we don't know if he's going to play this week or not. The question here, Matt, is we know that Tetairoa McMillan is the alpha. He's the guy in Carolina right now. I'm kind of wondering, because of the other players that they have there not being extraordinarily special, with apologies to Xavier Legette, is there going to be a role for Jalen Coker that presents him as a weekly flex option for us in fantasy football? Or do you not see that happening for Coker? I have him rostered on a few leagues, and I'm kind of anxious to see what happens with him, but I really don't know because him and McMillan have never played together before, and maybe that doesn't mean anything because they're complementary players. How are you looking at Coker right now?
I think that he will probably. I think he could potentially carve out a role. I mean, this guy, I've seen so much talk on Twitter over the last 2 years about the hype around this guy, and like he's got some fan base. He got some PR team on Twitter. They do a great job because he is talked about so much, and I think that he will probably get in that slot role, I believe, for Bryce Young, and he'll get to play kind of behind Tet, who's been putting up great numbers. I mean, Carolina is in need of really playmakers right now. So I think he could definitely carve out a role. And now I don't think you're going to want to start him right away off IR. Like if you have stats on your IR right now, you're not going to, put him in. But I think that Coker is a great player to have right now on your bench and see where it takes you. I think, maybe that connection with Bryce Young is legit and everyone is right about the hype here. So I would definitely keep stashing him, and we can just hope that he carves out a role, and we'll have to see as, the season gets on and he progressively gets healthier. I had one buddy in a shallow dynasty league, like week 1, he was planning on starting him week 1 because of all the hype, and then he got thrown on IR. So, there's guys that believe in him. So we'll have to see if that pans out.
Yeah. And like, I mean, I don't think, I'm trying to think, maybe in a dynasty league, I have him on IR. I don't think I do. I did pick him up in a couple of leagues, redraft leagues a couple of weeks ago, just because, he could be a difference maker. Maybe he won't be, but I see the potential there. And I know how he was used last year, and I know the plays that he made. So maybe he continues that in 2026. Definitely worth a spot on your roster. Just to see what happens going forward on that. Yeah, Tom Smith, would be nice to see Tet get some touchdowns. Yeah, no kidding. Here's to that. Tetairoa McMillan scoring some touchdowns to supplement all those catches would be good. Ray C, guys, I'll throw this up on the screen. Ray C has a quarterback question. Trevor Lawrence or Bryce Young? Speaking of the Panthers this week, the opponent that Ray C was going up against Jalen Hurts, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Dallas Goedert. That is a rough way to start week 6. John Terry saying both would not be enough to get you enough points between Lawrence and Bryce Young. I have Bryce Young going in one of my Lamar Jackson, Brock Purdy leagues, and I feel better about Young this week than Lawrence, but I don't know. Maybe you guys feel differently. Matt, what do you say?
This is a tough one. I do think Bryce Young, to me, he's one of those guys where, he's going to probably have a turnover in the first quarter. And then, once he gets that scheduled turnover out of the way, he tends to, get it going, whether that's garbage time or making a late push to potentially win the game. So I don't think he's a bad option, but I do think that Trevor Lawrence is not a bad play here because we just saw what Baker Mayfield did to that Seahawks defense, and they are banged up. So I think if there's also any week that Brian Thomas Jr. is really going to get going, it should be this week. And I've liked what I've seen out of this Jags offense and Trevor Lawrence. So if you're looking for more upside, I think you might find it in Trevor Lawrence for point-wise. But yeah, that's probably where I would go. This is a tough one. What about you, Dad? I know you're the start sit guy for us.
I think I would be the opposite on this one. I think I would go Bryce Young. I'm taking anybody who's playing the Cowboys at this point because they just give up a lot of points, and Bryce Young is a guy who can put up a lot of yards, and I think going up against that Cowboys defense, I would go with Bryce Young.
I just looked at this. The total on both of these games is fairly high. Seahawks, Jags, 47.5, 49.5 for that Cowboys-Panthers game. And ironically, or maybe unironically, the Jaguars and Panthers are both home underdogs in this game too. Jags are 1.5-point underdogs to Seattle, Panthers 3-point underdogs to Dallas, which should mean positive game scripts for both quarterbacks as well. How often do you see a 4-1 team hosting a West Coast team and they get their underdogs at home? That's bizarre. Really crazy.
Yeah. I just don't think Jacksonville's getting the respect yet.
And listen, until they start running that play where Trevor Lawrence falls down and then runs into the end zone, until they start doing that more, I don't know if they will get the respect. That if the Eagles have the tush push, we got to come up with a name for whatever the heck play that was where Trevor Lawrence falls down and scores a
Jaguar roll or something. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Does that roll incorporate Duval in there somehow? I don't know. The Duval fall. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. We might have trademark it right now. I'm glad you guys disagreed on that last question because it leads me into our first email from a viewer tonight. Caleb in Phoenix writes, "Hey guys, how do you decide a start or sit or draft pick choice stalemate?" Caleb in Phoenix, thank you so much for the email. Greg, you kind of alluded to this earlier. Has it ever come to where like you're on the clock or even worse when it's a start sit question where you have more than 60 seconds to kind of figure it out? Has it ever come where both of you guys are just hard-headed like, no, we have to do it this way this week? Has it ever come to that, or does one of you eventually acquiesce to the other in their judgment?
Yeah, no, I will usually, I don't think it's ever come to a hard-headed thing. I mean, we'll have a conversation. If we disagree, either one of us will try to, persuade the other one. And then if we're still kind of apart, I usually defer to him because, Matthew knows the stuff. He's a walking encyclopedia about this. So I'm usually the one that says, okay, let's go with your pick.
Who got who into fantasy football? Who started playing fantasy first between you two?
Oh, I've been playing fantasy football since he was, not even born.
Okay. So now the teacher has become the student, Greg?
Oh yeah. 100%. I think, Matthew and his friends probably did their first draft in like 5th grade. And I remember guiding him on his picks with his sheet, and we would cross it off at him because he'd like, should I take this guy or that guy? And I was guiding him, but now it's totally reversed. He's guiding me.
How many years have you guys been playing in on drafting teams together? How many years has it been?
I don't know, Matt. You have an idea on that?
I remember taking over helping in your main league. when one of your brothers, wanted to, stop with that. So I've been helping out with that for probably the last like 5 years. And we've been doing many online dynasties that we've probably had going for the last 5-6 years. So yeah, I mean, he's definitely, I remember those leagues back in elementary school and middle school where we'd be with my like 7 other buddies in like an 8-man league drafting. And I'd be like, Dad, like, who should I take here? Like, remember like taking David Johnson when he was awesome back in 2016. Like that's one of like the first like real draft picks I remember. Told him the next year, I was like, dude, we need David Johnson again. He's like, you're going to need the first overall pick if you want to get it. So yeah.
So okay, so this is good stuff here. In regards to like, okay, I'll use this as an example. Like there always comes a time in every father's life where he tries his hardest, but his son finally beats him in basketball or something like that. Did you have that moment, Greg, at a certain point where you're like, okay, based on what's going on here, I think Matthew really needs to take over and be the lead guy. Was there a moment for you on that?
I don't think there was a moment where that just clicked. I think it was just sort of an evolution where you start realizing it. Like he's living and breathing this stuff and studying it more than I am. And I'd come home from work and he'd be home from school and he'd be actually breaking the sports news to me. That's probably when I realized I'm like, okay, he's more in tune than I am on this.
Good. This is great, guys. I enjoy this conversation. Sal in Spartanburg. I want to get to his email. Sal in Spartanburg, South Carolina. How do you feel about Kendrick Bourne this week, even if Jauan Jennings plays? So, Matt, I'll throw this to you. And I actually have to look at this right now. That Niners game, Niners and Buccaneers, that is a 4:25 start. So we will not get, potentially, we may not get official word till like 3:00 on Sunday of whether Jennings is. It doesn't sound like Pearsall is going to go. In fact, he may have already been ruled out for all I know. But I think Jennings throws a monkey wrench into this. Mac Jones, I believe, is going to start. We saw the connection with him and Kendrick Bourne. Remember, those guys played together in New England for a couple of years as well. So maybe we shouldn't have been surprised about Kendrick Bourne's big Thursday night last week. But when you consider that Jauan Jennings could be active, I mean, how much does that gum up the works if you're planning on flexing out Kendrick Bourne, Matt?
To me, I don't think it really would matter. I mean, Kendrick Bourne, he had 10 catches for 140 yards last week on a short week too. The Bucks, I believe, are going to be out of their entire starting cornerback room as well. I know they've already ruled out like some of those guys, and some of them are like in braces in practice with their arms. So he's going to get a depleted secondary again, who just got fried by Sam Darnold and the Seahawks offense. So I can imagine that, Mac Jones and Kendrick Bourne might continue this magic over again on Sunday. Even if Jauan Jennings is in there, I think there's definitely potential for both of them to eat. I mean, Kittle's going to be out this week, I'm pretty sure. Again, I don't think they're activating him. And, I think the Bucks they are familiar with McCaffrey. He was a former in division. They're used to him and like Kamara, those reception backs that are going to, get a bunch of checkdowns. So I think that they're going to key on that. I mean, that's why the Rams lost at the end of the day. They were letting McCaffrey just beat them. So I think that the Bucks will be keying on that. And that depleted secondary will open up those two wide receivers, one way or the other, if both are in. So I would honestly consider start both of them if I had either of them and they were both healthy in the lineups.
I never root for injuries, never want players to get hurt. But you know what I do root for is players taking extra time to recover from injuries. And I think the worst thing that could happen is Pearsall being a surprise active on Sunday. My message for Ricky Pearsall, John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, because we know they watch this show every week. Guys, let Pearsall rest one more week. Let's just figure it out. The following week, you can have Kittle back. You can have Pearsall back. Let this be the week that it's just Jennings and Bourne cleaning it up, and McCaffrey, obviously, as well.
I think for you, they actually have ruled them out already. So don't have to worry about it. Will not be a three-headed receiver room. At worst, it'll be two. So
And that could be good. Like 2 could be better than 1. Like you have 1, and then obviously you can roll coverage towards that 1. But now you don't have to worry about that because you're gonna have threats on both sides of the field. Okay. Let's go with this final question here, and then we'll get into stuff around the NFL. Matthew, I'm gonna let you go ahead with this one first. Is there a player that you think a lot of FFPC players are going to be playing this week because of draft capital, because of good performance so far, that they probably shouldn't be because you think this guy's in for a down week? Is there a player like that out there? And then is there a sleeper that you think is going to have a big weekend, but not a lot of people are going to start him? Who are your 2 players to answer that 2-part question?
First, I think that is probably going to be in majority of lineups. It's going to be Alvin Kamara. I mean, this is because of his name value, and most teams, if you draft them, you probably got him in like the 4th round. And at this point, you got to start him, especially with all these running back injuries. Now, the reason why I think you might want to be more hesitant to start him or sit him is, one, he hasn't been that great this year. I mean, his touches have definitely gone down since the start of the season, and his output has not been the best points per game wise. And he's already coming into this week with an injury. Now, the injury is kind of sketchy because I think he will be traded at some point this season. And that plays into why. A big reason why I think it is because I think Kendre Miller is going to start to get a little bit more touches there. And they're just going to kind of go young and rebuild there and let him, go off to a better competitive team. So I would consider sitting Kamara this week for those specific reasons. Something I think will surprise is a little bit more of a deeper play. If you're thin at tight end, I would very much consider starting Cade Otton this week. We've already seen the Bucs have already ruled out Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Bucky Irving. So someone's got to catch passes there. And now I know Ibuka's been awesome. He'll probably see 10 targets plus this game, but someone else still has to step up. And they've got a good group of guys. But Cade Otton, he's already coming off a 4-catch, 80-yard week last week. And last year in the 3 games when Mike Evans was out with hamstring, also when Chris Godwin, after he got hurt with his ankle, he put up 10 targets, 11 targets, and 8 targets in those 3 games and had 29 fantasy points, 21 fantasy points, and then an 8-point game. But I do believe that he has upside to, see a good amount of targets and catches because somebody's going to have to catch passes from Baker, and we know he will spread this ball out.
I do remember a few games last year when Cardio Cade Rotten was crushing it. When Evans was out and Godwin was out, he was the guy, the beneficiary of it. Obviously, Sterling Shepard's still on this team. We've seen Tez Johnson worked in a little bit. But I think none of them are the threats that Cade Otton is. And that said, here's what's going to happen. Egbuka's going to get like 25 targets. He's going to have like 18 catches, and they're going to vote him into the Hall of Fame after the game. That's probably the most likely scenario on Sunday, but I do like the Otton call and the Kamara call as well. Kamara is a guy that I'm only playing him out of necessity at this point. Like, yeah. I know you have Jordan Mason, you have Woody Marks, you have those players on buys this week, so I might have to play Kamara in a couple leagues. But yeah, I'm trying to find a way to get him on the bench. So those are your 2. Greg, can you add any more knowledge and wow us with your choices here?
Yeah, on a sit, I think from a draft capital perspective, I'd have to say Garrett Wilson. He's going to go up against the Broncos. He's going to go up against Patrick Surtain, who just roams with the wide receivers, one of the top cornerbacks. People probably drafted Garrett Wilson, in the 2nd round, 3rd round, and thinking I got to start this guy. But, Justin Fields is a wild card. That Broncos defense is really serious. So I think that would be a sit for me.
Just real quick on that, just to piggyback off that, the other thing that I think, and this is more of like an instinct thing for me, that's the London game that kicks off at 9:30. Yeah. And just weird stuff happens in those games all the time. So like I could eat if you told me like, yeah, Garrett Wilson had 4 targets from Fields, he caught 1 of them for 3 yards. I should be shocked by that. And like, it's London. This kind of stuff happens overseas. So that's another thing that I don't think is necessarily working for him, might be working against him. Okay, yeah. I'm sorry, Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's no problem. And then my sleeper pick, actually, I'm going to build off of Matthew. And we did not talk about this, by the way. But, I say Kendre Miller as a sleeper. And probably not a real dark sleeper because he's certainly getting more touches along the way. But I think, with Kamara's injury, and if he can get some red zone touches in there, I think he's going to put up a solid week.
And obviously, John Terry chiming in, his prediction for you, Greg. He was going to say for you that you were going to tell everybody to play Dallas Goedert and bench the Eagles defense. That's what his prediction was on that, and maybe that was your prediction before.
I was thinking about Scatterboo for a second, but then I can't do that.
No, Scatterboo would have been a great call. That would have been a great call for sure. Okay, guys, let's get into it. Tom, I think it was Tom Smith was asking, where is my Raiders chain tonight? And John Terry, who got this for me in glorious Las Vegas, I have to wear it tonight because we're going to lead things off here in our fantasy feedback segment with a little Raiders conversation. So here we go. Brock Bowers not practicing on Friday. He did get ruled out for the game. This according to Ryan McFadden. Ryan McFadden. Michael Mayer is returning against Tennessee this week. And I don't know if there's anything there. I guess the question here, Matt, I think this solidifies Jacoby Myers as like a slam dunk top 15 receiver this week. And I also think it brings Trey Tucker into the flex conversation as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is another one of the situations where we're at like the buys and the injuries, and it's like somebody's got to catch passes, especially for its Raiders offense. So, I mean, Geno, he's thrown like 10 something interceptions, so he's not afraid to air it out. So yeah, I completely agree. This sucks if you own Bowers and this knee injury lingering all year. It's hurt right now, but I think there's better days ahead for Brock. But for now, you're absolutely right. Start Jacoby Myers and Trey Tucker. We'll see if we can get that magic from that 3-touchdown game a few weeks ago. But I think he's got it in him. So why not?
There's one league where I have Mike Evans and CeeDee Lamb, and I've been riding the Trey Tucker bandwagon the last few weeks, and let me tell you, it's not a fun ride. Hopefully, it's a fun ride this week. The other thing too, I'm going to bring up in regards to Bowers. So I have Bowers on a couple of leagues, and I don't think I had a backup tight end on either of those leagues because I was just going to play Bowers every single week. I'm actually, and while it's been pretty bad, trying to find a fill-in tight end, think about how brutal that position is, and then trying to find a fill-in tight end off the waiver wire, forget it. It's not going to happen. I'm actually rooting for Bowers to sit out until it's fully healthy because you don't want him coming back where he re-aggravates it, and then it maybe becomes more significant and he's out for the year. I want this dude coming back not at 97%, not at 99%, 100%. That's when I want Bowers coming back. And if it takes a couple more weeks, it takes a couple more weeks. But I don't want to risk it. And he was even talking about how he said that he's just not himself. He doesn't feel as explosive out there. And we can all see it too. Yeah. Brock Bowers, get well soon, buddy. And don't come back until you are fully healthy. We kind of talked about Kamara and Kendra Miller, so I want to skip over that. And I want to get into this, speaking of tight ends that are hurt. Brenton Strange, with both a quadriceps and a hip injury, is going to be sidelined at least 5 weeks, according to NFL insider Jordan Schultz. Schultz is reporting that this is also a ligament tear that he suffered against the Chiefs on Monday night. But he is not supposed to need surgery. I thought when you tear a ligament, you had to have surgery. Apparently not. This is why I'm not a doctor. Strange was placed on IR, so we knew he was going to miss 4 weeks minimum. Now it's 5 weeks minimum, which is really not great. He was leading the Jaguars in catches this season. Looked like he was breaking out. And now I'm thinking, in my mind, I'm like, okay, where's the fantasy goodness going on this offense? This, to me, is tailor-made for more action, offensively speaking, for Travis Hunter, Matt. But those guys they're not the same player. They don't have the same role on the offense. It's just purely from a standpoint of where the target's going to go. I just assume that more go to Hunter. Maybe De'Ami Brown. I don't know if you have anything good to say about Hunter Long, the replacement for Brenton Strange there. He's not on my radar. Should he be? What's going to happen with the Jaguars now losing a player who led them in receptions on the season? How does this get distributed to everybody else? BTJ is another guy that we should talk about here too.
Yeah, this one sucks. I mean, this was one of my guys coming in that I thought could have a breakout year, and he really was getting it going the last few weeks. So this one sucks. But for the rest of the offense, I do think if you're a BTJ owner, this opens up a door. I mean, his deep analytical numbers over the last 2 weeks have been much better and much more promising than they were to start the year when it comes to those yards per target and kind of more down the field looks. I still get scared against Brian Thomas Jr. Like I said, if it's going to happen, it's going to be this week against that Seattle secondary. But I do think, maybe we see Travis Hunter, continually more involved. He had that awesome catch on prime time, that big play downfield. So, yeah, I do think that this should definitely open up more targets. I would definitely say for Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr., Diami Brown, I don't know. It's just like kind of guy, if you're in a deeper league, maybe, he has some big weeks, but you're probably going to see some of these, Brian Thomas Jr., Hunter get there. Maybe Travis Etienne can get a few more catches as like a safety blanket option for T-Law. But to me, this is just, if I'm a Brian Thomas Jr. owner, fingers crossed. Come on, let's get going. We're 5 weeks in,
Matt, you had already mentioned Cade Otton. The reason that we like Cade Otton this week is obviously because of no Godwin or Evans. Chris Godwin has a fibula injury, not playing against the Niners this week. Greg Allman had reported this. And I'll be honest with you. You mentioned the secondary for Tampa. They're missing a lot of players this week. And rather than talk about Sterling Shepard and Cade Otton, who I think we've already talked about, how do you guys feel about this Godwin thing going forward now? It was such a significant ankle dislocation last year, needed not one, but 2 surgeries on it. He comes back and plays heavy in his first game back. And now here he's not playing in week 6 because of a fibula injury. I wonder if this is something that is this the beginning of the end for Godwin, that he's just always going to be banged up and never be the player that he once was? Or in Dynasty, maybe is this a buying opportunity where you can get him on the cheap? I don't know. I'm rambling here. Chris Godwin, your thoughts going forward on what type of player he's going to be the rest of this season and beyond, Matt?
I mean, this was a scary injury when it happened. When he went down, you knew he wasn't going to come back, honestly. Mm-hmm. So I thought he would probably miss a lot of this year. Then he signs that big contract. You're like, okay, like they're confident in him, they'll get him back. And then they draft Emeka Egbuka in the first round. And that's kind of when some sirens go off in your head. You're like, all right, like what's going on here? Like they didn't really need to go get a wide receiver. I thought he was rushed back, but then you see him out there and he's playing like a great amount of like percentage of the snaps, and he's seeing targets, and these didn't look bad. And he even finished the game last week. It's not like he got hurt and then come back in. And then this news comes out, and it sounds like, it's something to his ankle. I mean, there's photos in training camp. His size of his ankle compared for the injured ankle to the big one was like so much smaller than the healthy one. So to me, this is probably just like we might be looking at a wash season the rest of the year for Godwin. I would probably not buy him. I just wouldn't want to deal with this. Maybe he gets back to, what he was last year and what we saw out of him his whole career. But this is just a scary injury. It really sucks for him because he was a great player. Had some great years, but this is just something you got to avoid. And, it's Emeka Egbuka's time. He's going to be a future All-Pro. That's the Bucs wide receiver 1 moving forward. Even when Mike Evans, comes back, that's Baker's guy.
He will turn 30 years old next year, will Chris Godwin. He just signed that extension. I don't know. I mean, if this truly, I mean, the thing is, Mike Evans kind of hinted at retirement before the season started as well. So Egbuka is actually in a really good spot there where they might, I mean, I don't know what to make of the Buccaneers receiver room. It might look completely different at this time next year rather than what it looks like now. I don't want to be all gloom and doom on Godwin, but to your point, Matt, it is within the realm of possibilities that he just might never be the same.
Yeah.
I want to move on, guys. We have how much time? About 7 minutes left in the show. This is plenty of time to get into some start sits here from some of the viewers. And I want to lead things off with Mike in Bensonville, Illinois. Zach Ertz or Kyle Pitts? Matt, I'll throw this to you first. And then, Greg, I want you to weigh in on this. So this week you have Kyle Pitts going up against the Bills. That's at home. Bills, I think, have been the Falcons have been pretty good on tight ends. That's what it was. So you have Pitts at home against the Bills, or you can have Zach Ertz at home against the Bears. Matt, which one are you deploying in your starting lineup?
I thought I'd never say this, but I think we'll have to start Kyle Pitts here. He's shockingly been pretty good this year, and I'm not a Kyle Pitts guy, but these are kind of two like grosser options for me. I'll go with Kyle Pitts.
Greg, is that which is that the direction you'd go?
No, I would go Zach Ertz. I think I'm going for the stable play here. With Ertz against the Panthers.
I'm looking at this right now, and I don't. You guys probably already noticed. I'm falling in on. Not that this is like how I decide start and sits, but I love looking at the point totals on these games. 49.5 with the Falcons, a 4.5 point underdog, which makes Pitts a little bit more juicy. The Commanders this week are. Why do I not see the Commanders here on my sheet? Oh, that's right. There's 2 Monday night games.
Yeah.
As an FYI, public service announcement for all the viewers tonight. You have the Commanders at 49.5. They're a 4.5 point favorite. However, probably no Terry McLaurin this week. So that's another feather in Zach Ertz's hat. Adam Hahn chiming in right now. He's got a starter sit for us this week, guys. He wants to know, should he go with Baker Mayfield at home against the Niners or Caleb Williams at the Commanders? Greg, I'll let you handle this one first. This is a fun one here. Mayfield or Williams. This is the kind of thing that you always love to have on your roster until it comes down to starting one of them. Because I feel like if I had these two guys on my roster, I'd be making the wrong call every single week.
Yeah. I mean, this is a good one. I mean, Baker Mayfield is having a heck of a season. He throws the ball all over the field. But Caleb Williams, man, we've got Caleb Williams and we've got Roma Dunze, and we've been riding him, in a couple of our leagues. I think I would probably go with Baker Mayfield on this one, though.
Okay, so Mayfield and Matt, what do we have from you on this?
You got to ride the hot hand. Baker's probably the MVP right now if their voting ended today. So I know he's depleted, but Baker he always finds a way to get guys the ball and produce. So you got to go with him.
Make it 3. I'm saying Mayfield as well. John Terry chiming in. Guys, I know this seems weird. This is an easy one for me. Rico Dowdle at home against the Cowboys, revenge game, or Derrick Henry at home against the Rams. I'm not thinking too hard about this. It's Dowdle for me, and I'm sitting Henry.
Yeah, isn't that crazy to think about that? But
yes, it's crazy.
I agree with you on that one.
It's crazy to consider it. It's even crazier to say Dowdle is the pick. But I think he is. I think that's who you have to go with here. Let's see. What's the next email we have here? Rich in Lincoln, Nebraska. Justin Fields or Bo Nix, which is weird because these are the two guys facing off against each other in London, 9:30 a.m. kickoff. Get those lineups set Saturday night or early Sunday morning. Bo Nix against the Jets. Justin Fields against the Broncos in London. Matt, you can only play one. Who's it going to be?
Justin Fields has actually been very good this year, but he has not faced a defense as good as the Broncos yet. I would be starting Bo Nix.
Greg, you also agree?
I would start Justin Fields. I've wanted Justin Fields. This is an argument that we've had our entire draft because I kept saying to Matthew a whole bunch of times, I want Justin Fields, and he's like, no. And I'm like, that guy is a home run hitter in fantasy. He's a dual threat. And he's a little bit of a ceiling guy. So I'm going Fields here.
Did you guys draft Fields anywhere this year?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
We ended up.
I kept saying, in fact, I did do another league, actually, me and my brother and Matt, he was at school. He was not part of that. And we actually drafted Justin Fields.
Your guy.
Matt, why were you? I mean, I get why some people did not like Fields. Why? What was the reasoning specifically for you that you went elsewhere at the quarterback position?
I don't know. They're just. I just thought like there were good options at quarterbacks everywhere, and I know like Fields, he's put up some good fantasy years, but I don't know. Something scared me off Justin Fields on the Jets going into the season. There was something there. I was like, I'll take my shots on Caleb and Drake May and Dak and all those other safer options with just as high of ceilings and go with them. And it's kind of where I ended up most of the time.
And I think that's very well reasoned too. I think while I did like waiting on quarterbacks quite a bit this year, I did get Fields on a couple of teams just to see what would happen. And he's come through a couple of times, but couple of times he really hasn't either. And then was that last week? I can't remember if it was last week or not. He was awful. I think it was the Cowboys game. Was that this past week?
He was really bad all game. I had one of my buddies who started and was pissed off. And then next thing I know, I checked at 4:00 when the game's over and he has like 30 fantasy points.
And they pretty much all came in the fourth quarter. I mean, it was garbage time. And garbage time still counts. Counts the same. Next one here, Al in Indianapolis. Greg, I'll throw this one to you first. Chase Brown or Michael Carter? Another one that we get into at the start of the season. This would be a joke. And now here we are week 6, and this is a legitimate thing. Chase Brown getting Joe Flacco now in at quarterback over Jake Browning. I don't know how much that weighs into your decision here. But Chase Brown is in Lambeau Field against the Packers this week. And then you have Michael Carter, who is at Indianapolis. Greg, if you can only pick one, which one would it be?
Yeah, so, this is a tough one because actually in the FFPC team, we actually picked up Michael Carter. He's sitting in our starting lineup right now for Sunday, and this is going to be a tough decision. But if I'm sitting in a vacuum and I'm faced here with this decision, Chase Brown or Michael Carter, I'm probably going with Chase Brown just because I think he's a little bit more reliable. I don't know what I'm going to get out of Michael Carter. To me, I'm still kind of confused on what's going on out there in Arizona. So I'm going Chase Brown.
Matt, what do you think?
We might be split on this one again. This one depends on the league format, if it's PPR or not. I mean, we know Joe Flacco will check down. If it's PPR, I'm more inclined for Chase Brown. If it's not PPR, there's no question I'm probably starting Michael Carter. I do have questions if Kyler Murray is going to play, though. If not, I probably go Chase Brown. But that would just be for the receptions upside. He's been really bad. So if I had to pick, let's assume PPR, let's assume Kyler plays, I'm going to be starting Michael Carter.
I think that, yes, that definitely does make sense. And I just assume Kyler Murray is in the late game window. No, he plays at 1:00, which is great. I mean, the Cardinals do. We'll see if Kyler Murray plays or not. But that'll be good because you'll be able to make that decision early. Final one tonight, and this will go to Matt first because it is a Matthew Golden question. Still in Fullerton, California. Matthew Golden or Jameson Williams? So this week, Golden gets the Bengals and their stalwart defense at home. Or you could go the other direction on this and start Jameson Williams on, I think it's the Sunday night game this week. Tonight, Kansas City and Detroit. And that game is in Arrowhead. So between Williams and Golden, Matt, which way would you go on this?
Yeah, I mean, Jameson Williams, he hasn't done anything yet this year. Neither really is Matthew Golden, but I will assume I'll give Matthew Golden the benefit of the doubt coming out of the bye that they will try to get their rookie involved. And just like Adam says, you cannot start JMO, not until I see it yet. So we're going to be starting Matthew Golden. Let's hope that bye benefits him.
Greg, what about you?
We finally agree on one.
Accord to end the show. I think that narrative about rookies coming out of the bye week, I think we've seen it work a ton. Will it work in Green Bay? There's definitely a better than a non-zero chance of that happening. I still worry about the Packers getting out to a big lead. I still worry about them spreading the ball around, but those are champagne problems. If you got Matthew Golden, fantasy football is supposed to be fun. Start him over Jameson Williams this week, and I think he'll have some fun. We had some fun on the show tonight. A lot of reaction from the chat room right now, guys. You were a big hit. Fantastic stuff from both of you tonight. I want to wish you good luck. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you before. So half decade or whatever, you guys have been playing together. Greg, I'll throw this to you, and Matt, you can weigh in too. What was it like seeing your name, your team name, up at the top of the Big Gorilla leaderboard or near the top of the Big Gorilla leaderboard? I think for a couple of weeks, it was right in the top 5. What was that like for you guys to look and say, my God, thousands of teams, and look where we're at right now? And I understand week 4, week 5 or whatever. That has to be a thrill, though.
Yeah. It was an absolute thrill. And in fact, I didn't even realize it for the first 3 weeks because I think it was after week 3 that I actually looked at it and I'm like, and I texted Matthew, I'm like, do you know that this team is ranked 4th? And then it was pretty special. Yeah. So now it's given us a little extra juice for sure.
And Matt, pretty cool to have your father as your co-owner and to have this team that high up there.
Yeah, he's the one who told me. He said it. He was like, "Hey, we're in I think the first text was we were in 16th place after week 3," and I was like, "Wow!" And then I'm looking at the text. Like the next text is, "Yeah, now we're in 4th place the next week," and he's like, "This would pay out $20K," and I was like, "You know what? $10K to me don't sound too bad right now." So I was like, we got to keep it going. So we'll see where it's a long season ahead. We've
Right.
already lost. I'm pretty sure we lost Tyreek Hill to injury on this team. So, we got a long way to go, but we'll see what can happen.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. You lost Tyreek Hill, and yet you're still churning. You're still making hay. That the Ferguson pick, the McCaffrey pick, you guys have got a bunch of really good picks on this team that can really carry you for sure. And who knows, if everything falls the right way and the ball bounces the right direction, you guys might pop on this show again in December, January, whenever it is. Maybe with $1 million in your bank account, which would be pretty cool. I wish you nothing but the best of luck. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. This is a pleasure. And enjoy week 6, guys. We will talk with you again soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Eric.
Absolutely. You got it. That is Greg and Matt Salter, ladies and gentlemen, the father and son duo that spent week 4 in 4th place overall in the FFPC Big Gorilla. I want to thank both of them for coming on tonight, the FFPC, of course, Rob, Bryce, and each and every one of you for listening, streaming, downloading, viewing, watching, whatever, however you're consuming this content. God bless you. We will be back live Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern time. Ferrell, I think, is going to be back for that show, and I think he'll be doing it live in Las Vegas, which will be very cool. In case you missed the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown from Tuesday, 2-time FFPC varsity champion Larry Weinhauer joined me to kind of do an early preview of Week 6. A lot of good stuff in there about team management, team construction as well. So check that out anywhere you get your podcasts or on any of the FFPC socials. Next week, we'll be live again for the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown at 10 p.m. Eastern time as well. In case you missed the FFPC Insider Access show last night on the Better Sports Network, I mentioned it already. Brian Drake from Fantasy Point, SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, Fantasy Pros, The Huddle, Sportskeeda. He does it all. And it was a really, really fun show. He was an Eagles fan, or is an Eagles fan. So covering that game for the first quarter plus was miserable for him, fun for our viewers. So if you want to check that out, anywhere you get podcasts, and of course the FFPC socials and the Better Sports Network, bettersports.com. We'll be back on Thursday night at 7:00 for 2 full hours for I think is it the Steelers and Bengals that play? I know it's the Steelers that play on Thursday night, and we got a Steelers fan joining the show, Optimus Fantasy Zone, CH Herms. If you've seen this guy on our shows before, I know you're not going to miss that episode because it's going to be a lot of fun on Thursday night at 7:00. Check out the FFPC Weekly Challenge. It's live right now. No draft, no salary cap. Just pick 10 or 12 players. If you want to play with kickers and defenses, you can win up to $2,500, 10, 30, and 100 team contests. Only one player per NFL team. So if you want to have Matthew Golden, you can't have Josh Jacobs. If you want to have Justin Fields, you can't have Garrett Wilson. myffpc.com is where to go. myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live, which the next time will be Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. Thanks so much for watching. For Greg Salter, for Matt Salter, I'm Eric Balkman. This has been the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour here on the FFPC Network, podcast network, I guess you can call it. Of course, your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Ferrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
One more thing, and I know I mentioned this already on the show, but I'll tell you one more time tonight, ladies and gentlemen. 9:30 a.m. kickoff in London. Do not miss the deadline to set your lineups. Set them Saturday night, and if you want to, set them again on Sunday morning. But make sure you don't miss that deadline. Always good to have a quadruple header of NFL football for all play week this week, too. No head-to-head matchups. Just finish in the top 6. And you will get a win in the FFPC Main Event and the FFPC Big Gorilla. Enjoy it, everybody. Can't wait to do this show again with you next Friday. We'll talk with you Tuesday night on the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. Be good, everybody.